All right, Alexander, let's answer the questions from the live stream we did with Gonzalo Lira. And let's begin with Mark Hewitt, who says, what do you think about the actions of Nadim Zahawi, first demanding to become chancellor and then going into number 10 to demand Bojo's resignation? You actually talked about this.
Well, I have indeed, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to add anything more to what I've said. I mean, I find it utterly bizarre. Of course, there's some suggestions that he didn't want to become Chancellor but was pushed into it. If that's true, that of course tells us that he's either a man of weak character, which the other actions would imply, or that he's got things in his past that give others leverage, which is also something which we might want to bear in mind. Either way, it's not impressive.
Stephen Bateman says, strong Russia, ura. Thank you, Stephen, for that. Budweiser, thank you for that super sticker. Zuxuxi says, good day, everybody. Thank you for that. Claude Bilados sends us a super sticker. Thank you, Claude. Michael Arnold says, where is Rees-Mogg in all of this? Positioning, question mark.
I think I answered that. I mean, positioning, overtly supporting Johnson, but clearly thinking beyond Johnson and looking at his own position.
Possum Power sends us a super chat and says, send my tuition to Lady Cosmica. Thank you very much for that, Possum Power. GEC812 says, the Duran community, you are amazing. Thank you very much, GEC812. Lady Cosmica says, oh, stop it, Gonzalo, you're making me blush. Keep up the great work, lads, all three of you. Thank you for that, Lady Cosmica. Toilet Sauce says, Bojo, the dangerous clown, manages to hold on to power for a little longer, even after resigning.
Absolutely. He's now talking about clinging on until September or even October. It's most extraordinary. So he hasn't actually resigned, if you think about it. He said that he will resign at some future date. I mean, whether he'll be able to stick on that long is another matter.
Paul Fenton, thank you for that super chat. William Sasanto says, Bojo leave. Crazy Liz is still there. Be careful.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Aaron Go says, sends us a super sticker. Thank you for that, Aaron. Commander Crossfire says, is there a point where things in the EU become untenable and they are forced to end hostilities against Russia? I don't think one will come from the US.
Okay, it's not impossible that that might happen. And I understand that there's now finally people coming out and talking out in Germany against the present policy. They are, for the moment, people on the margins, people like the former left-wing leader Oscar Lafontaine, others like, members like Alice Weidel of the AfD. But, eventually that might start to meet into the mainstream. But it will take a while to happen. I mean, don't expect it to happen immediately or even soon. Maybe in the middle of winter it may happen.
Tyler Durden says, goodbye, warmonger. Next is Germany. I hope the Greens will be kicked out of government somehow.
I not only hope they're kicked out of government, I hope that this is the beginning of the end of the Greens in Germany. They have been a disastrous party. They have distorted the whole development of the German economy, and they've wrecked relations with Russia, and they've given strength to the EU monster. So I hope that, when this debacle really hits home, the German people will finally and fully turn their back on them.
All right, GEC812 says, how do you boys stay sane with the amount of information you have to keep up with to provide such excellent analysis? World's best. We all struggle.
Well, we struggle, we fight. We have each other, and that does make a difference. When two people are able to talk things through and approach it with humour, it does actually help. Otherwise, it would probably be unbearable.
Devin Ball says, how long can the Greens cling on in German politics?
This is. I mean, it's not going
actually, you didn't answer how long they can cling on.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be easy to break them completely because of the way in which the German political system is structured. They have very, very strong positions in many regional parliaments, and because it's regional parliaments that decide the makeup of the German upper house, it means that the Greens are very strong in the German upper house, and they can block legislation even if they're thrown out of power. So this is not going to be an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Mirrored Peace says, great, Crazy Boris is out. When Vander Crazy and Co. will give us such pleasure and some space to common sense.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mirrored Peace. Sanjiva says, Alexander, you remind me of the British who were my father's medical colleagues. They were always kind, careful in language, disciplined, and a book in hand. Is that Britain still there, or did the 90s and wokeness destroy it?
It's still just there. I mean, you find people like that. But, I mean, you know, it's a Britain that is under a lot of pressure. And thank you, by the way, for your words.
AICI, she says, Corbyn could have saved this country from monoparty.
Yeah, I think that's actually a valid point. You may disagree profoundly with everything that Corbyn stood for and thought about, but he did provide, an alternative voice to the, this dominant monolith, a centrist globalist monolith, and of course, a strong left tends to result in a strong right, and then you have dialogue and balance. I mean, I can remember how Britain used to work quite well when you had a strong Labour Party and a strong Conservative Party, and they had their clear constituencies and their clear policies and their clear differences. And the interesting thing was, at a social level, they actually liked each other. I mean, this is a strange thing to say, but I can remember it well from the past. I'll give you an example, just very briefly. Many people know The Avengers, that British TV series from the 60s with John Steed and Emma Peel. Well, at that time, we all knew that Emma Peel was Labour and John Steed was Conservative. But they always worked together. So that's the Britain that we used to have, and it's gone.
Lady Cosmica says, as much as I want Clown Bojo gone, I shudder to think who will replace him. Labour are a big no-no. They'll turn us into a socialist country quicker than an offended snowflake having a meltdown.
I completely agree with every point. I mean, I don't know whether most socialists would call Starmer much of a socialist. I mean, a globalist is what he is, a fervid one. And that's the problem. And, of course, the globalists have their own perspectives of society, but that's what Starmer represents. That's what Starmerism is. And I agree. I mean, I shudder. I mean, I've never known things so bad in Britain, as I've said many times.
Mark Hewitt says Zahawi did not agree to become Chancellor. He blackmailed Bojo by threatening to resign as Health Minister.
Well, who blackmailed whom? I mean, I'm not quite sure. Then, was it Zahawi who blackmailed Bojo, or was it Bojo who blackmailed Zahawi? It's not clear to me. We'll find out eventually. We don't yet know the whole story.
Neil McDonald says, if you can get sacked while all others are resigning, you will be a gove, my son. Apologies to Kipling.
True enough. Great poet, by the way, Kipling.
Daniel.
Appalling man. Great poet.
Daniel Jovanovic says, do you think that Boris leaving will make any real difference to the economic path that Britain and the West are heading towards? If no, then what will bring real change?
I've said it already. I don't think it's going to make the slightest difference. What has to change is the entire structure of the British political class, and not just the British political class. What we have to see is the final, conclusive, disastrous failure of the globalist project and the discrediting of everybody connected to it. When that happens, at that point, you will see a change.
Callberry says, thank you for your work, guys. You really helped me to stay sane. Thank you for that, Callberry. Roman, thank you for that super sticker. Matriputra, thank you for that super sticker. Toilet Sauce says, what is Kwarteng doing? Shouldn't he be maneuvering right now if he has PM ambitions?
I think he's biding his time. I think also he probably senses that if he becomes Prime Minister now, he's going to inherit a mess. And he doesn't want that. I mean, every Conservative politician wants to, at cabinet level, wants to be Prime Minister at some point. in that career. I'm sure Kwarteng is no different. So the fact that he's not pushing himself forward too prominently suggests that he's making political calculations, that at the moment it won't be the right moment for him to strike.
Aaron says, according to Spikeman, quote, who controls the Rhineland rules Eurasia. Who rules Eurasia controls the destinies of the world.
Yeah, this is. I mean, it's also from Mackinder. You know, I've heard that too. But I mean, we're not quite. I don't know how real that is anymore. I mean, that was written, I think, before the First World War. I don't know how real that is anymore. But you know, certainly people, some people in Washington, definitely continue to think that way.
Odemir Livre podcast says, I would like to address an invitation to Mr. Lira for a live stream interview on my channel, Odemira Live Livre
Okay,
podcast.
we'll pass that on to him. Yeah.
If you're watching Gonzalo,
Yeah.
yes, you have an invitation from Odemira Livre podcast. Nick Mastilovich says, thank you for your balanced analysis of the current world situation. Also, I very much enjoy historical fun facts you share with us when the opportunity allows.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nick. The Gino Zanko says, when will people finally get out and protest? I see unheated houses, electricity blackouts, and fading factories and jobs starting from late fall.
They're already protesting, at least in Europe. I mean, we've talked about the Netherlands. We can talk about Britain, where there's been lots of protests. And I think that's only the start.
Life of Brian says, I fear that the war is hardening the division between the political class and the population to the point where the former will dispense with democratic pretenses and move to open authoritarianism.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think that's definitely the drift. I mean, it was already the drift before, but I think you're right. It's accelerating.
Nancy, thank you for that super chat. Maribon, thank you for that super sticker. Sanjeva says, thanks Duran community for providing a place for exchange of ideas and community. Alex, Alexander, Gonzalo, you are doing a great service. To many of the listeners, thanks again and God bless. Thank you, Sanjeva, for that. Tabernak says, Johnson just announced he is stepping down as prime minister and conservative leader. Eurasia is asserting their independence with quiet efficiency and ferocity.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Tabernak, Tommy Gunn, thank you for that super chat. Liz Hill, thank you, as always, for your superb reports and keeping us in the know that Duran is the best. Thank you very much, Liz, for that fantastic super chat, and I hope all is well with you. Lady Cosmica says, yep, you're right about that, Alex. I feel more like a token native given how Bojo, the clown, treats us compared to the Ukraine. We had no right getting involved in a war that never concerned us.
Absolutely. I'm sure more and more people are going to start thinking that.
Yes. Michael Sherry says, the obvious is that the conservative capitalist system has no answers, as useless as Sir Keir, and the chicken coop gangsters class war is coming.
Well, class war, I mean, you know, we've had different views about this, you know, but the point is, Keir Starmer is part of the political class. The political class is committed in Britain to the integrationist globalist project. And whilst the opposition is represented by people like Starmer, we're not going to see any change.
Yeah. Harry Mark, thank you for that super chat. Tabernak says Boris treated this conflict like his Helen of Troy.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Interesting comment. Yeah.
Imre says, any chance of Farage to return? He seems to be the only sane one. Actually, you answered this in detail, Alexander, in the stream. Yeah. Harry Mark says, who is the ex-KGB guy? Is there still this organization in London where the conservatives meet Russian donors? Alexander Lebedev bought the lost money-making Evening Standard newspaper in 2009, installing his son Evgeny. You answered this as well.
I did indeed. Just on the question of the organisation, they do still meet Russian donors. These people are fervidly anti-Putin. And that's an important point to make. And I know this. I give an example. There was a conservative councillor who was a friend of mine who was married to a Russian woman, and he wanted to write on one of the conservative websites a pro-Russian piece. And he was warned off doing it by people in the party who told him the donors, the Russian donors, the London-based Russian donors, won't like it. So, they have influence.
For the last two questions, Alexandra answers them in detail in the live stream. Yeah. Chris Spouse says, Boris will step down when a new leader for the Conservative Party has been elected. Yeah. It will take weeks or months before he's gone.
Yeah. What a thought. I don't know, by the way. There are now moves to get him out faster. We'll see whether the Conservative Party can organise itself to do it.
Yeah. Matt Oli, thank you for that super chat. Daniela, thank you for that super sticker. Poetry Butcher, thank you for that super chat. Chef Nick Nero says, it's hard to get real non-biased news. For a change, I've completely stopped with mainstream. Somehow the politicians will infiltrate this too. Yeah,
well, I hope not. If you're talking about the Duran, we're not going to be infiltrated by anybody. There's just two of us, after all.
Right, exactly. Nick Mastilovich says, now that Bojo is gone, who will tell us the stories about Peppa Pig, and who will have hot, sweaty fantasies about shirtless Putin?
First of all, he's not gone.
Remember, all true comments.
Remember, he's still there.
Yeah. Oh boy. Roman says, will we soon see a divorce between Russia and Kazakhstan?
No. I take the opposite view to some people. I think we're going to see closer integration. Tokayev, the Kazakh president, was at SPIEF, and he was talking alongside Putin. And it seems to me that, with some nuances, he was pretty much and very obviously part of the team now. So, there's still things to sort out in Kazakhstan, but I don't think we're going to see a divorce between Kazakhstan and Russia.
Paulie says, Klaus Schwab is very proud of Mark Rutte.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Sure,
yeah, no doubt,
yeah. Sparky says, Bojo is more Gallipoli Churchill than a World War II one.
I would agree with that in the sense that what he touches turns to dust. But even Gallipoli to Churchill was on a different level of stature. Even when Churchill was disastrously and catastrophically wrong, he still did so with a flair and an intelligence that Bojo has never been able to attain.
Yeah. Yov says Israel will be the last lighthouse standing by far.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree with that, absolutely. If you're talking about the three lighthouses. Personally, I think the analogy, Pompeo's analogy, was a nonsensical one. I mean, putting Ukraine and Taiwan, especially Ukraine, on the same level as Israel, which is a country with a strong army, a strong economy, a well-organized political system, and nuclear weapons, and comparing Ukraine to that is just, it just goes to show to me what a completely delusional figure Pompeo is.
Pinyamamba, thank you for that super sticker. Mitp says all empires fail because of arrogance, ignorance, and because they treat the very people who made their empire with utter disdain.
Yeah, absolutely true. Completely right.
Matt Oli says, could it be that both Zelensky and Bojo are de-arming UK as many other EU countries for the next move of the anti-deep state movement?
I don't think so. I think this is. I don't think there's any plan or method behind this. I think it's just foolishness, to be quite honest. Boris. He's not. Let me put it like this: he's not the self-sacrificing kind. He wouldn't be doing this on purpose, in order, wrecking his career in order to disarm Britain. As part of some great plan to disarm Britain. That isn't Boris's style at all. And I know people who know him.
Unmasked 17 says, can we give you Jojo? Thank you very much for that, Unmasked. Psionic 8, thank you for that super sticker. Summer of 1970, thank you for that super sticker. Sparky says, tried to warn about Pompeo. People thought me mad.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure.
And then Sparky says, well, and a follow-up is Sparky says, will Trump now see through Pompeo?
I think, yes, I think he will. I think this is a big moment of divorce between the two. I don't think Trump will, have, and Pompeo are going opposite directions, and I don't really see the two of them coming together again.
Tyler Durden says, thanks, your analysis is spot on about Germany. An Eastern European with German passport. I can't believe this economical suicide here now.
I agree. I mean, I have to say, it's the worst German government I've ever known. By far.
Yeah. By far. Radovid, thank you for that super sticker. Sparky says Pompeo and Haspel continually misled Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. Haspel especially. CIA director.
Yeah. And Sparky says Pompeo is an apocalypse accelerationist.
Yeah. I agree with that too.
Interesting. Yeah. John Morgan, thank you for that super sticker. Reza says, Happy Thursday, Alex and Alexander. It is always a pleasure to listen to your informative and objective analysis. The Duran rocks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reza, very, very much for that. Real Girl says, is the U.S. getting ready to fight China to the last Australian? We are building loads of camps here in Oz, internment camps maybe?
I don't think that's their plan, but that might be ultimately what happens. And I think Australia needs to make some very careful decisions. I'm not suggesting that Australia break with the US or that it, cozy up to China or anything like that. But I think Australia needs to decide what its priorities are and start to develop independent foreign policies suited to Australian interests. And I think if it did that, it would find that it has a great deal of leverage with both sides.
Yeah, Tim Gibson says Trump loved Pompeo and he continues to love him. He's an adult. Don't make excuses for him, people.
Oh, I don't make any excuses for Trump. His decisions, his appointments of people like Pompeo and Bolton were disastrous, and they reflect terribly on Trump. Whether Trump still loves Pompeo, I really don't know. I doubt it, to be honest.
John Morgan, thank you for that super sticker. Justina Oska says the downfall of the EU and the collective West is not so far. It doesn't make me cry.
No, it doesn't make me cry either. But of course, that doesn't alter the fact that if they come, fall, will they bring down a lot of Western civilization, European civilization, American civilization down with them? And there's a lot of greatness and value in those things, which I will be sorry to see lose. And of course, if there's human costs, well, that will be a tragedy also.
Yeah. Ivica said thank you for that super chat, that amazing super chat. Ivica Marjanovic. MK, thank you for that super chat. Joseph Gorgen, is the crazy U.S. foreign policy just the effect of an out-of-control MIC, military-industrial complex?
I think it is partly that. But it's not just the MIC. There is an ideological fringe. There's, the globalists who are not identical to the MIC. And there's the neocons who are not identical to the globalists. They all overlap with each other, and they all form a rather terrifying group when you bring them all together. But it's not just the MIC. But the MIC is important because it's what provides the money and the lobbying heft.
Joseph Viscaletti says the nuclear war on sea with China is about dominating world oceans, which is existential to Anglo-Saxons. Russia was never a naval power, but China is.
Yeah, absolutely true. You're completely correct about this. It has been a naval power in the past, and it will be again. Russia has had navies and has taken an interest in the sea, but it has never depended on the sea in the way that the United States does, and it's never been a trading power in the way that China is.
Yeah. Antar Das says America has the military advantage minus the hyper missiles. They don't have the leadership and strategy advantage. If a carrier sinks, hell will come. Yeah. I should say technological advantage. The U.S. has the technical.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that, and I think that's just true. But I think Americans need to be realistic, and they need to understand that this technological advantage they once had, which used to be enormous, is no longer as great as it once was. I mean, it's no longer as great as, say, it was in the 50s, when the United States was clearly far in advance technologically of all its peer competitors. The Soviet Union even at that time, and of course China far ahead. But I mean, now things have evened out, and they will continue to.
P says dominoes are starting to fall. Next in line, Germany, France, Italy, and the
Yeah, I
Baltics.
wouldn't be surprised. I think it's very likely, actually.
Giovanna says, let's all text on social media, peace, not war.
Absolutely, let's do that. I mean, I avoid social media like the plague at the moment, but I mean, that's what we should all do.
Popuse, thank you for that super sticker. Summer of 1970 says, all the West's leaders are malignant narcissists.
Yes. There isn't a single good one amongst them. Orban, of course, is different, but of course they would deny that he was even a Western leader.
Aaron Tardas says, the elite of America is the British elite in 1914.
I've argued that point myself, that there are strong parallels.
Colin Budge says, I think the establishment see the Belt and Road as the big threat to the West, and now we will see European countries spend more on military NWO resets.
I'm sure they'll do all of these things, money
reset
that they don't have, and they'll just have to print more to cover this, and that's not going to be good.
Brian Shin, thank you for that super chat. Ches Bezaldo says, one must not forget the Chinese infiltration of the U.S. Congress presidency as well as states' governments. The Chinese are everywhere in the federal government.
I think there's a lot of truth to that too. Unclear exactly how much influence they wield, but they have wielded influence in the past. And I saw a very interesting op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, for example, from a US businessman with interests in China who was talking about improving relations with China.
Novice Black says, everywhere it's the same. All the government is focused around a single area. Here it's Den Haag, The Hague, and they become disconnected from the rest of the nation. This is one of the reasons for the farmers' protest here, and now England has the same problem. Politics needs to be localized.
That's completely correct. I agree with that. I mean, some countries do work better with very centralized governments. I think Russia, historically, has been most effective when government has been very centralized. But overall and in general, and especially in the West, particularly when you have these sort of slightly artificial capitals like Washington and The Hague, there is the danger of disconnection. And of course the Westminster bubble as well.
Euro Gabor says, the Johnsons should visit Harley Street for a chromosome check. Someone has a toxic masculinity running in the family, and the other one suffers from a roundish big red nose. Disneyland always hires. Thank you for that, Euro Gabor. William Sisanto says, West talks about $750 billion to repair Ukraine because Ukraine failed.
Yeah. I mean, 750 billion. It wouldn't go to Ukraine. It'll make a lot of very, very rich people even richer.
Exactly. Jungle Jin says constructive Australian foreign policy at work. The Prime Minister Albanese said publicly he will treat Putin with the contempt he deserves if they meet at the G20.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly very constructive, very diplomatic, very just the way to build up relations and to find a way.
Reza says, gentlemen, is it true that Iran and Venezuela have requested to join the BRICS? Actually,
I think we have, yeah.
Iran, yes. Venezuela, no. It's the short answer. Yeah. Ralph Peterson says, China is no innocent victim, as the Vietnamese. Thanks for
I think we answered that too. They're not an innocent victim, but as I said, they are rational,
yes,
and that's the point. That's the distinction.
Yeah. Milos Kajanik says, keep up the good work. Sparky says, U.S. farmers should spray manure at governments too. Divine Insurgent said, Alexander Mercurius, is there a theme or name of the wallpaper behind you? It has a nice aesthetic.
There is, and somebody on one of the other live streams found out what it was, but I can't remember. What I would say is it's designed by William Morris, who is the famous, interior decorator, architect, arts and crafts person at the end of the 19th century. So if you go to William Morris wallpaper, you will find the example.
All right. Chris Morrell says, what's the plan? Stupid as it may be, just listen to what Liz Truss reads out.
Yeah, yeah, true enough.
Ches Bazaldo says, I think the Chinese want a war with the U.S. as they believe a war with the U.S. will bring the U.S. down. It would help the overall Chinese initiative.
I don't think they're looking for a war with the US. I think the Chinese opinion view, which may or may not be right, by the way, but I think the Chinese view is the time is on their side, so that they don't need a war because, sooner or later they will emerge as the top power anyway. So if that's the calculation, they don't need a war. But, a war, quite possibly, is what we will end up with.
Kurwas says, at some point, the crazies in the basement will fight the Russians to the last vassal, and the WEF will use the opportunities to get their stuff. Not only the Great Reset, but also SA to back on dollar, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. All I will say is this. I don't think the WF people have the ability to control events to the extent that you say. They may want to, they may themselves believe they have that ability, but events always run out of control. People who come up with these elaborate and sinister plans are always confounded because the energy of the moment, the forces that they unleash are ultimately always too powerful.
Summer of 1970 says the last official act of any government is to loot the Treasury. George Washington.
Right. I thought it was Jefferson, but I think George Washington. Okay, well, there you go. And true enough.
Jungle Jin says, with the consolidation of the Sino-Russia bloc, about 1/3 of the real global economy, why should China actually care about any U.S. sanctions?
Absolutely, that's the point. Well, they will care because they're not yet fully insulated against them. But they're taking steps to prepare for that. And they are already more insulated, a lot more insulated than they were, precisely because of this relationship they forged with Russia.
Right. Pope Rackets Touched Me says, might be a gas station with nukes, but what happens when you're out of gas and who robs a place with more arms?
Well,
establishment plan, grab a bag of dumb ideas from Darwin Awards.
This is so good. That's an excellent point.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Jungle Jin says, what would Trotsky have thought of the neocons? I think you answered that.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Actually. Yeah, you answered that. Michael Sherry says, Sir Keir getting heat now over Mahmoud bully.
Well, yeah, but I mean, yeah, I think he'll be around. I mean, I've seen that the British police have said that, oh, no, of course he didn't violate lockdown regulations, despite, appearing to do so. So, because people now think that he's going to be the next Prime Minister, and because the globalist elite in Britain, the political class, the establishment, probably are already preparing to be, for him to be Prime Minister, you will see that the path will be paved for him to take over. Except when he does, things will continue to get worse.
Yeah. Kirwas says, any empire needs intervention to survive because this is the very reason why it exists. Intervene to gather resources they need to survive. Yeah. Avtek Man says, thank you both so very much for your refreshing, stimulating analysis of the current circumstances regarding Ukraine-Russia conflict. Thank you very much for that. Jessica 4J, thank you for that super sticker. Alberta Traficante says, wasn't the U.S. support of Chairman Mao in the 50s and the invite into WTO with the most favored nation the plan to drive a wedge as well?
Well, I don't think the U.S. was supporting Chairman Mao in the 50s. My memory of him, of that period, is that they were, they were really, really worried about China at that time and about Chairman Mao. And at that time, of course, he seemed to be an ally of the Soviets. So, I mean, I don't think they supported him in the 50s. In the 70s, obviously Kissinger and Nixon did the deal with Mao, but then, he died soon after. So, where I think you're closer to being right is that when the US basically agreed to China joining the WTO and opened its doors to Chinese goods, I think they thought that they were integrating China's economy into the Western system, which ultimately morphed into the globalist system. And what they discovered was that the Chinese used it to their advantage.
Timothy, thank you for that super sticker. Claudia, thank you for that super sticker. The Ghost of Georgia Guidestone says, has there ever been a politician with more pronounced fall than Boris? Came to office with absolute mandate after historic election victories, and he leaves having done nothing but lockdowns and spending.
I agree with that completely. I mean, I've never known anything quite like this. This has been the most disastrous failure of a prime minister that I've ever seen.
Paul, thank you for that super chat. Sparky says oil at $40 may be more depression than recession.
I completely agree with that, by the way. I think that if they bring it down to that level, we're going to be in a very, very heavy depression indeed in the West, especially given the fact that the Chinese look like they're now trying to stimulate their economy. So that which logically ought to be providing a support for oil prices.
Lady Cosmica says, I'm not surprised the police started shooting. To be honest, they're more akin to state thugs than anything else. Reference to the Netherlands, I imagine. Thank you very much for that, Lady Cosmica. Elena says, is Japan wanting a conflict in Taiwan in hopes to take Sakhalin and the Kuril Islands?
I think we did, but no, I don't think they are. Yeah. But I think we did answer this, yes.
Yes, we did. Threlino says the Slovak government is about to collapse.
Oh, interesting. Okay, didn't know that. I'd like to keep an eye on that, actually. Slovakia has...
We need to keep an eye on Slovakia and
Bulgaria, absolutely. Well, Bulgaria looks to me to be in a deep crisis now with Petkov trying to cling on, and despite the fact that he's clearly lost massive amount of support. And it looks like Slovakia as well is heading in the same direction.
And protests in North Macedonia because of Bulgaria, because of the differences with Bulgaria. So it's tense situation all around. And Reza says the final question is the final comment is from Reza, which says, "Thank you, mods."
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reza. Thank you, mods. Thank you, everybody. That's everything.
Great.
Take care.